As we know, AI is disrupting every industry. Over the past 2 years, I've helped build AI and automation workflows and systems for different service industries. And one that I've gotten very familiar with is property management. In just the last few months, I've spoken to a number of property managers and management companies. And one pattern I've noticed is how robust but restrictive specialized property management software can be. And so you may be a company that uses a platform such as AppFolio. You may use a platform like Buildium or something similar. And these software are highly sturdy, but at the same time, kind of inflexible in being able to create systems and workflows that weren't already sort of built into it or weren't built with the advancements in technology in mind. And so, as AI and as these technologies are starting to become more relevant and companies want to introduce them into their operations and use them to make their businesses more effective, the way to do that is you have to first sometimes extract the data from these specialized platforms before creating the workflows that can help in supporting the operations of the business. And so in this video, I'm going to show 3 simple automated workflows that can go a long way in being able to help property management companies and really real estate companies at large get set up for success for the long term when moving data around. And so, if you'd like to see the templates for these workflows, you can find them in the Pinterest Club, which is our free community for AI and emerging technologies. But with that said, make sure to hit the subscribe button, turn on your notifications, and let's get right into this. All right, so we're going to be using Buildium in this example. This is going to be similar for any major property management software that has an API that you can use to connect with outside platforms, any open API package that it contains. So it will be similar for AppFolio or other platforms out there. And what we're dealing with here is how you can actually transfer the property data, whether that be the rental properties, lease data, or different files that are in the account out of the software to make.com middleware. So make.com serves as a connector for all of this and then be able to transfer it elsewhere. So if you want to transfer it to a CRM, or if you want to now use that data as a part of other automated workflows, being able to first extract that data from this property management software is key because, for example, the software may not necessarily allow you to do multi-step email sequences or text message automation, or may not have AI introduced to it or integrated into it. Not to say that it never will, but being able to transfer that data out of the platform to then now set up workflows that will support your business is something that is very key and helpful. That's what that API documentation is there for. So this will be helpful for anyone who's actually looking to uh, use an API for a platform and to transfer that data or to connect that main platform that's being used, in this case, Buildium, to other platforms, or just to be able to transfer data elsewhere. So whether you're using the API, which is just a way of connecting one platform to another, kind of think of it like a plugin for the software, or you're using a webhook, which will literally transfer the data from the platform when specific actions occur. In the case of a webhook, specific packets of data will get transferred or will get sent when a trigger that is set goes off. And so Buildium has this extensive API documentation that will allow you to take all sorts of action. But I will say that after having gone through this documentation and spent real dedicated time with it, there are definitely certain parts of it that are more relevant and practical than others. And so being able to extract the property data, for example, is one, and being able to post data back into Buildium is another. In this video, we're going to be talking about retrieving data from the platform. And so the first example, just to cut to the chase, is pulling rental data. So within Buildium, and I'm using a sandbox account. This isn't production or a real account. It's all dummy data. And this for demonstration purposes only. But within Buildium, at the bottom left, if you go to settings and click on developer tools, it'll take you to a portal where you'll see a place where you can create an API key, and it'll also show you a place where you can create a new webhook. And by doing that, you'll be given a client ID and a key that you can then plug into a platform like make.com to then send the information of interest and data of interest to pull it out of the platform. So I'm going to use rental properties as an example. I set up for this demo here. And so you're going to use a make request HTTP module, which is when it's triggered, will pull that information out that you set for it based on the documentation within the API. And so if I click on this here, and again, this is not real data. It's all for demonstration purposes. In Buildium, the URL you're always going to use for the make a request, and you have to look at the documentation to determine what you should be using to trigger that API. In Buildium, it's always going to be ap-sandbox.buildium.com. When it's production, which will also have its own key, client ID and secret, you're going to use just api.buildium.com. And so you'll see this URL here, which if I let's even just take the V1 rental units here and paste that in, that'll take you to the part of the documentation that deals with rental units and being able to retrieve rental units here. And so you see the metadata that will get retrieved when you trigger the API. So it's not going to give you the actual documentation, right? But it's going to give you the metadata that gives you information about these properties that you could then use for other workflows and tasks that you need. And so when you create that key in Buildium, it's going to give you this client ID. The name is going to be x-buildium-client-id. It's going to give you a value. Again, it's not a real value. It's going to be the get for the type of method. Typically, you're going to be using get or post. Post is when you're putting the data into it. Get is when you're taking it out. And then the second item is going to be x-buildium-client-secret. Is going to have a specific value. And then in the case of rental, so we're looking at taking out the rental property data within, again, you have to look at the documentation. So within the documentation, it tells you, so if I go in here and copy last updated from and put that in, it'll show you that to specifically retrieve the information from a point in time, you put last updated from. And so this query string here, that name is going to be last updated from, and then you're going to put a value, and that value has to be in a specific format, a UTC format. And so within make, you can find the dates, and you just need to make sure that it's in this specific format here of the year, the month, the date, and then the time that is happening. And you can put a limit or however many entries can come in that workflow. And that's going to be it for this. When you trigger it, it'll now pull the data from Buildium. The next step is you have this what's called an iterator, and that iterator will take all the information, which is coming all in sort of one time, one aggregation, and then this iterator will spread it out. So it'll divide it into the different rows. The phrasing is it'll iterate through the rows. And so you'll map the data from the HTTP request, and it'll this is the data. So you'll map the data from the HTTP request, and then it'll go through each row. And on the sheet that you create, so you have a sheet that you create specifically for this. So I have this demo automation sheet right here with different headers. These row headers are associated with, again, the data that is specified within the Buildium API. And specifically, what you're going to be looking to do is you want to take one of the rows. So again, here's some dummy data that I'm working with. And let's say we use property data to then look through the rest of the row. So we put in here filter based on the property data. So the property data will get matched up with what comes from Buildium, and then it'll literally just identify that it exists or doesn't exist. And so now, if it exists, if there's already an entry for that particular, in this case, we're dealing with different rental units, right? So if there is an entry for that particular rental unit, we would just be updating the unit data itself when it comes in. So it goes based off of something called bundles. And so if the total number of bundles is greater than 0, meaning that it already exists, like, so the data is considered to be a bundle, it already exists, then it'll simply just update what is already on the sheet. If the bundle, this filter, and in order to create this filter, you right click, hit set up a filter. If this filter has a bundle that's equal to 0, meaning that the entry doesn't exist on the sheet already, then it'll create a new entry on that sheet. And that is the automation of how you pull the rental property from Buildium, and then the data for the rental property, and then get it onto this particular Google Sheet. And it can be set to run periodically, right? So maybe something that's running once a day, maybe something that's running once a week, once a month, depending what makes sense for your business. And this specific workflow now allows you to create other workflows. Maybe you need this data in another platform. Maybe you need it in a CRM, for example. Maybe you need to be able to send this information to somebody. Maybe you need it to cross-check other areas of a business that interface with that property data. And this is for rentals. Now, I have two other workflows here that are very similar. One is for leases, and the other is for files. And the business files would include leases, but could also include like addenda and other files that you can create within, particularly within Buildium. And here the process is exactly the same. Only difference being that, so if you were to go to the API, type in, V1 leases, and you go to that tenant data, the headers on the sheet will look different, but it's the same process in that when you're searching for a row, you're identifying a specific field, right? So in the case of the rental automation, we're looking at property ID. In the case of leases, maybe you're looking at a specific lease ID, something that's identifiable that you can then search the rest of the row with. And you can do that for files and any data that you're looking to pull from Buildium. And then from there, you might, again, pull that data into a CRM. Maybe you're using it for another process within your operations. But now that information is out of Buildium, and you can now do with it what you will. Maybe you're not introducing AI, and now you start using these large language model modules to make sense of the data in some way. Maybe you're doing some sort of data analytics, but this is something that a lot of people and companies probably aren't doing or thinking about, that can enable you to do some pretty cool actions within your operations, and is definitely a key part to, if you're looking to sort of build an operation system, I recommend incorporating to your overall process. And so with that said, the API documentation is extremely important to look at, because that's kind of like that's the roadmap, the blueprint, right, to everything that you're able to do within the platform. And once you get comfortable with it, it becomes easier to use. API documentation can often be extensive. You'll find that there are in practice, and for like practical use cases, there's specific parts to it that are more relevant than others, that one would use, right, more than others. And something that you can do in order to even go through this API documentation is you can take this and you can actually pop it into something like a Google Gemini or an LLM and have it actually go through the documentation so that you can understand how to best leverage it. Because these API documents can be very extensive and can be a little bit tedious to figure out the best ways to leverage them. So that's what I have for you. 3 workflows that are helpful for pulling data from property management software. This would apply to real estate software as well as pulling property data. And from there, you can do a whole bunch of different kinds of workflows and create different systems, some which may involve the property management software itself, some where you maybe create a workflow and then you push it back into the system, and some that can keep it out of the software for good. And it can go a long way in helping you to elevate your operations. I hope you enjoyed this. I'll see you for the next one.